Okay, this is a 2023 Dodge Challenger Hellcat. I have the Magnaflow xMOD exhaust on the car right now, and with the carbon fiber tips, and it's awesome. I mean, it's a really fantastic exhaust. Now, there's a few things that I want to tell you about this exhaust that other people aren't telling you in their videos. Okay. For starters, I want to give you a very clear picture of how these pipes align through the rear of the vehicle. You can see that they are much closer to the right-hand side than to the left-hand side. You cannot align these dead center inside of this cutout opening, okay? So if you're looking at it, you're like, oh, why isn't it centered? Why isn't it centered? It's just that way. You cannot get it centered. And you do want to make sure that you have good gap, right, on the top, okay? So we've got about 3/8 to half of an inch of gap on the top, and we have perfect horizontal alignment with the earth. So that's how that looks, and it's going to look exactly, obviously, it's going to look exactly that same way on the other side, right? So you've got a larger gap to the right, and I'm, if you're wondering, I'm talking about this gap right here, from left to right here, and a little bit of a smaller gap on that side. But the top distance, even the top distance on this side is the same as it is on the other side, so that's good, right? The quality is fantastic, right? Without question, very, very good quality. It does come with instructions. You can install it yourself. So there are instructions here, right? And this blown out diagram makes the installation fairly simplistic. A lot of people were kind of saying, oh, well, like which side, how do I know what's the top and the bottom of the X pipe? Okay. Towards the front where it hooks up into your catback system, into the catalytic converters, the passenger side pipe is longer than the driver's side. Okay, so that's how you know, right? This piece is longer. That's on the passenger side. Pretty easy. That's the number one comment that I saw on Magnaflow's website. I can't figure out which way the X pipe should go, right? Well, if you look at the diagram, it's fairly self-explanatory. Can you pay somebody to install this? Yes. They'll charge you somewhere between $250 and $500 to install it. It'll take them about 1.5 to 2 hours. I installed this myself. Probably took me about 4 hours, and that's just because I had the car on jack stand, so I didn't have, a lot of space to work with. I was laying on my back, and I was kind of doing it piece by piece. Originally, I put in the straight-through mufflers because I figured, okay, this thing is, even with the straight-throughs, it's going to be much louder than stock. Well, guess what? Newsflash for you. With the straight-through mufflers, it's actually quieter than your stock exhaust, okay? And so definitely go with the straight-through pipes right out of the gate, because that is going to make it slightly louder than your stock exhaust, okay? Slightly louder, not crazy loud, but slightly louder. So that's one of the things, and I've watched probably 20 videos on people installing this exhaust system on their Challenger and sound clips that are all over the internet. And by the way, those sound clips on the internet really, any kind of recorded audio of exhaust isn't going to do any kind of justice. So you're not going to hear in my video, you're not going to hear the exhaust because it just doesn't really tell you anything. You have to hear it in person. But go with the straight pipes right out of the gate. I basically I had these on, I took them out. It took me about 45 minutes to remove these and put in the straights, okay? If you're gonna use the stock tips, you're gonna use this piece with your stock tips. I couldn't actually get the stock tips off my old exhaust. So I just obviously went with the carbon fiber, which looks amazing, and I'm glad that I did because it's awesome. Generally, it's a really great exhaust. If you have a wide body, you absolutely need these brackets. So you're going to take off the factory fender, kind of rear fender brace brackets. You're going to put these on. Let's see here. Let me see. Okay. So I'll show you those brackets in a second, but let's talk about hooking up under here, right? So in the instruction manual on the very first page, it talks about the torque specifications, okay? So these bolts right here are 40 to 45 foot-pounds. And I did 42.5, I split the difference. And then those are slip joints, right? So for the slip joints, you're gonna wanna use something like this. Anti-seize, thread lubricant, right? This is high temp copper. They do make a silver version, but this is rated up to 2000 degrees Fahrenheit. And that basically, what you want to do is you want to just kind of lube up, not too much lube, but a decent, amount of this stuff on your slip joints so that they don't get frozen in there, right? If you want to remove the exhaust system, it's going to be very, very, very easy to remove it, right? So up inside of this slip joint, I lubed it up maybe about 2.5 inches in, and this one 2.5 inches in. These particular bands here, right? These are called band clamps. I did 42.5 foot-pounds. So I hit this with just electric kind of screwdriver, like an impact screwdriver, not an impact wrench, but like impact driver screwdriver. I do have an impact wrench, but I didn't use it because it's kind of overkill for this. And then I came in with my torque wrench and I torqued these down 42.5. And you can see the distance here, right? Like these clamps, you want them to be about 1/2 inch or so, 1/2 to 5/8 away from the end. And then you clamp those on. And after about 50 miles of operation, you want to loosen and re-torque those. So loosen them and then re-torque them. If you start your car and it's running and you see water dripping out of these joints here or here, any water dripping out, okay, that means you have gas leaking. So there's exhaust gas escaping, and you're going to want to reposition and retighten those band clamps to prevent that. You don't want to see any water coming out of there at all because that means you're leaking exhaust. I did polish, this pipe, and I have another video on how to polish it. It's very quick and easy. It takes like, I don't know, probably 40 minutes to polish the entire system. Here you can see the straights, right? So there's the straights. And then the exhaust valve, the active exhaust valves right there. The other thing too you want to note is like there's not a tremendous amount of clearance from the exhaust to the floor. So this car's on stands, but you have about 5 inches of clearance from your pipes essentially to the ground. So just be aware of that. If you're going to go over any kind of large things, your exhaust system will clip. Then the X pipe, the positioning and alignment, right? So the end, the seams, the weld seams here, you want those to be in alignment here with the end of your heat shield. So direct alignment there. Okay, that's how you know you've got good alignment on your X pipe. That's where you want it to be. And then you want to make sure that that X pipe is not coming in contact at all with the heat shield. I have about 1.5 inches to 2 inches of clearance from the top of the X pipe to the heat shield, where the drive shaft is. If you do not have sufficient clearance, what you want to do is you want to loosen your catalytic converters, right? So you got 2 bolts, one right up in there, and then another one up on this side, up in there. I can't really get to it, but there's 2 bolts. You want to just loosen those right up there. There's one. There's one on the other side, right? You just want to loosen those a little bit, and then the whole you'll see the whole system drop down into a nice position. You can then put a jack stand or a jack underneath and kind of jack it up exactly to where you want it to be, and then tighten those back up. And so that worked out really well. That's a super important piece to note. Now, let's go take a look at those. Let's just come under here and take a look at the arms, okay? So you have that rubber mount right there for the rear. There's one on this side and one on the other side. Now, the factory exhaust, that rubber mount right there, it has a bolt on it. Let's see if I can get a good view, a good angle on it here. Well, I can't really, but there's a singular bolt that holds that in on the backside, and it's actually mounted right there, okay? So you can see where that threaded hole is right there, and the giant circular hole and the threaded hole next to it. That's where it's mounted originally, and you have to unscrew it from there, and you have to relocate it to right there, okay? And that is an official relocation spot. If there's a threaded hole, there's the anti-slip, pin there and everything. And then the bracket, right? There it is. And then, so the bracket goes inside on the bottom, right, like that. And then the bolt goes through and it bolts in. And then that bracket just comes down and it pins right into there. See? Super, super easy. So the instructions aren't like really clear on that. But you do have that ground cable there, and you want to make sure that you get that ground cable reestablished connection onto your exhaust. But generally speaking, I'm like very happy with the system. I'm very happy. Now, oh, there's one other thing. So you see those kind of U-clamps, those are U-clamps right there. It says to torque those between 30 and 35 foot-pounds. I had my torque wrench set, and I'm using, you know, a mid-grade torque wrench. It tops out at 70 foot-pounds, so it's designed to be used anywhere from 10 to 70. I set it to 32.5, and the nut will bottom out. I mean, it will completely bottom out before it even gets to a torque rating of 32.5. Okay, so there really is no effective way to torque that to 32.5. So you just go in all the way. I mean, you just go in as far as you can. I mean, I had the torque wrench on it, and I couldn't get a click out of any of those bolts, so I just went in as, you know, as far as I could. But that's something to know. If you're trying to reach, you know, 30 to 35, it's probably not going to happen for you. It didn't happen for me. And I have very high quality torque wrenches. I zero them out every time I use them. The one that I have is not very old, maybe like 5 years old or 5 to 8, somewhere in that range. I've probably only used it, you know, I don't know, maybe 100 times total, but usually for torquing things between 25 and 50 foot-pounds, right in that range. So it's not like my torque wrench is out of spec or out of calibration. It's just the nature of these particular clamps. All right, that's it. So yeah, I'll put a link to buy that anti-seize in the description, and the Magnaflow exhaust you can get from American Racing or Magnaflow Direct. If you, on American Racing's website, if you use the discount code military, I think you can save like 5% or something, which is like $70. So why not? I know we're not military, but you know, any little bit of money that we can save, I think is a good thing. Well, a lot of us aren't military, but yeah.